Hello, it's Phillip Taylor from Richmond Green Chambers speaking. I'm talking about a book called Oil and Gas Exploration Contracts. It's in a second edition and it's written by Jennings, who's an expert in this particular field. This is the book here. It's quite a slim one, from Sweet and Maxwell, nice red cover. You'll see that it's very much along the lines of the standard Sweet and Maxwell law books, with referencing at the sides, a lot of detail. There are 6 chapters actually covered in some detail. There's the contents page. At the back there's some useful indexes and links. There's also a flyer which I've seen which says energize your oil and gas contracts, and that's really what this book does. I've given it a slightly different title, which is Jennings Digs Deep into the Aladdin's Cave of Exploration Contracts. And the reason for that will become obvious. It's because of what he said in his introduction. Let me just read a little bit about what the book is and what value it has for us, basically as lawyers. As I said, Jennings is actually an expert in the field of petroleum, and therefore he's got a lot of expertise. But he gives here an invaluable guide on the drafting, negotiating and interpreting of contracts in the exploration phase specifically of our search for the most precious of all natural current resources, which is petroleum. His excellent slim volume states the law, in my view, concisely, covering an important piece of the exploration jigsaw, which is what we call the legal agreements, and that's actually what makes the deals happen. Jennings examines the commercial background of each main contractual clause from his extensive background in energy resources, and he provides us with a thorough and practical knowledge of the interpretation and reasoning behind them. And the new second edition, which has just come out at the end of 2008, assists in both the drafting and the interpretation of a full range of exploration agreements. And it's the only up-to-date text that I know that's available in the subject. As I've indicated earlier, there are 6 chapter areas covered in this relatively slim book, and it gives sort of the first part of it starts with a background to the industry. Then we go into the reviewing of contracts and the operator, joint venture agreements, agreements for services, drilling contracts, and it ends with transactions. So that gives you some idea of the fact that we're into quite technical areas quite quickly with the terms that he uses. What I liked about the book, of course, was the detail, because it gives clause by clause commentary of the commercial agreements used in worldwide gas and oil exploration, covers all contracts from the start to the end of the exploration phase. It analyses the practical advice which can be applied to jurisdictions worldwide, always a big consideration in the search for oil, obviously. It covers joint venture agreements, the JVAs, like joint bidding and joint study agreements. It includes coverage on drilling contracts, which is again especially important, such as also areas ancillary to that, like rig sharing agreements and rig assignments. And it also analyses agreements for the sale and purchase of exploration assets. The contents themselves, as I said, it's a slimmish volume, but it's got a lot of detail in it. I looked first of all at the section on exploration agreements uncovered, and I found it gave an excellent background to the legal framework for licensing and production sharing regimes. I then went on to the operators' relationships, which cover a range of issues, from contractors under commercial agreements to letters of intent, option tendering and inquiry packages and so on. Obviously we then looked at joint venture commercial agreements, covering the following details: AMI agreements, bidding agreements, joint drifting agreements, joint study agreements and so on. It also includes joint ventures and third-party contractor agreements, for the following services. We take it first as offshore construction, vessel, geophysical consultancy and procurement, and then the onshore, which is the drilling, aircraft, data licensing, to give some examples. There are useful areas right towards the end of the book on drilling contracts, that's in chapter 5, and detailed information on rig sharing and so on. And then finally you've got the sale and purchase transactions, which cover agreements for the acquiring and disposal of exploration assets. Obviously always an important factor at the end of the contract, and that also includes asset and share sales, farm outs and so forth. So the jurisdiction covered is international, as is the appeal of the book in my view, which has been expanded in this second edition to include new information. Now, as Jennings says in the various comments that he makes, the central task of the book remains that of providing detailed elucidation of the many agreements that are not covered in other commentaries elsewhere and then can subsequently be overlooked. Not here though. The book deals primarily with the agreements in the exploratory phase, as I've explained, where much of the risk actually is, in my view. The grey area of the exploratory end and then the development beginning are neatly covered too, because obviously they overlap with the intermediary approval stage. So whilst I would classify this as a law book, it's not the author's intention to deal in depth with legal matters of a non-contractual nature or to look at specific legal regimes. What Jennings does admirably, in my view, is to give a commentary of a universal nature about these issues that is both true worth and the value of the book itself. He tells us rightly that he always keeps in mind the fact that the various global legal regimes are the frame, as he calls it, within which the agreements need to be placed. And then he comes to the end bit, which I rather liked. He says, he concludes with a theatrical allusion, saying that all this is the pantomime backdrop against which the characters perform. In this our production of Aladdin, and he adds the essential light touch here to the seriousness of the agreements operators need to reach to conclude their business. And this touch, I think, makes the book a great success, and it gives us plenty of clauses for thought. So I thought I'd get that in. Anthony Jenkins. So thank you very much indeed. Anthony Jennings rather. Thank you very much indeed. Bye bye.